out from the back of the church. This time, it was a woman's voice, filled with urgency. "Wait!" The woman hurried down the aisle, her face flushed with emotion. She was middle-aged, with traces of gray in her hair and a worried expression on her face. Cynthia recognized her immediately. It was her mother. "Mom!" Cynthia's voice was shaky, filled with confusion. "What are you doing here?" Cynthia's mother, who had been avoiding the wedding preparations due to her own complicated history with her late husband, now stood before her daughters with tears in her eyes. She looked at Darlington, then at Chuka, and finally at her two daughters. "I need to say something," she began, her voice trembling. "There is more to this story than you know." The tension in the church thickened as everyone listened intently. Cynthia's mother took a deep breath and continued. "Your father, he was a good man in many ways, but he made mistakes, big mistakes, and I was part of those mistakes." She looked at Sophia with sorrow. "Sophia, your mother and I were friends. We met before we knew about each other's relationships with your father. When we found out, we were both devastated. We both loved him and we didn't know what to do. In the end, we made a pact, a decision to protect our children from the truth, thinking it would spare you the pain we went through." Sophia's eyes widened in shock. "You knew? You knew we were siblings and didn't tell us?" Tears streamed down Cynthia's mother's face. "Yes, we knew, but we thought it was for the best. We thought if you didn't know, you could live normal lives. But now I see that we were wrong. I am so sorry, Sophia. I am sorry, Cynthia. We never meant for this to happen." Cynthia's world shattered even more as the full scope of the deception became clear. She looked at her mother, feeling a mixture of anger and betrayal. "How could you keep something like this from us? How could you let us fall in love, knowing the truth?" Her mother sobbed openly now. "I am so sorry, Cynthia. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that I only caused more pain." Darlington, overwhelmed by the emotions swelling around him, turned to Cynthia and Sophia, trying to find a way to make sense of it all. "Where do we go from here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The church was silent, everyone holding their breath, waiting for an answer. But none came. The path ahead was unclear, shrouded in uncertainty and heartache. And as the reality of their situation settled in, Cynthia, Darlington and Sophia realized that they stood at a crossroads where every choice would lead to more pain, but also the possibility of healing and redemption. But the journey to that place of healing would be long and fraught with challenges. Challenges that they could only face together if they choose to confront the past and find a way forward, no matter how difficult it might be. The silence in the church was suffocating, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swelling inside Darlington, Cynthia and Sophia. Each of them felt the weight of their shattered realities pressing down, but no one knew what to say or do next. Suddenly, the tension was broken by the sound of slow, deliberate applause echoing from the back of the church. Heads turned in unison to see a figure leaning casually against the doorframe, a smirk playing on his lips. It was Emmanuel, one of Darlington's childhood friends, known for his mischievous ways and unpredictable behavior. "Well, well, well," Emmanuel drawled as he walked down the aisle, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Looks like the perfect little wedding isn't so perfect after all." Darlington clenched his fist, a flash of irritation crossing his face. "Emmanuel, what are you doing here? This is not the time for your games." But Emmanuel wasn't deterred. He looked around the room, enjoying the discomfort he was causing. I just came to see if the rumors were true. And boy, was I not disappointed? Who would have thought? A love triangle turned family drama. This is better than any Nollywood movie. Shut up, Emmanuel, Cynthia snapped, her patience finally fraying. This isn't funny. Oh, I know it's not funny, Emmanuel said, his expression suddenly serious. But it is fascinating, don't you think? All of you caught in a web of lies and secrets, just waiting for the whole thing to collapse. And now it has. Sophia, who had been quietly crying, looked up at Emmanuel with a mixture of confusion and anger. Why are you even here, Emmanuel? What do you want? Emmanuel shrugged nonchalantly. I am just here to watch the show. But now that I am here, I might as well add to the drama. After all, I know a few secrets myself. Darlington's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Emmanuel's smirk widened as he pulled out his phone, scrolling through it before holding it up for everyone to see. You see, I've been doing a little digging of my own, and I found something interesting. Something about your father, Darlington. Darlington felt a cold chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Emmanuel sauntered closer, enjoying the suspense. Turns out, your father wasn't just involved with two women. He had a third family, one that he kept even more hidden. Gasps filled the room as everyone processed this new bombshell. Cynthia's mother looked horrified, while Chuka's expression grew more serious. Sophia's tears dried up as shock took over. A third family? Darlington repeated, disbelief evident in his voice. That can't be true. Emmanuel laughed, a bitter sound that echoed through the church. Oh, but it is. And guess what? The third family knew all about you. Sophia and Cynthia. They've been watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to step into the light. The revelation hit like a punch to the gut. Darlington's mind raced, trying to comprehend the implications. Another family? Another set of siblings? It was too much to process. Cynthia, who had been holding herself together, finally broke down. How much more of this can we take? She sobbed, her voice raw with emotions. How many more lies are there? Emmanuel's gaze softened slightly as he looked at Cynthia. I didn't come here to hurt you, Cynthia. But you all deserve to know the truth. Your father was a complicated man and his decisions have left scars on everyone involved. But you can't keep living in the dark. Darlington, feeling the weight of responsibility, stepped forward, his voice firm. Emmanuel, if there is more to this, tell us now. We deserve to know everything. Emmanuel nodded, his tone losing some of its mocking edge. There is a woman, Darlington. Her name is Nkechi. She was your father's secret lover. And she had a son, a boy named Ifeanyi. He's about your age. Sophia's eyes widened in disbelief. So we have another brother. Yes, Emmanuel confirmed, his voice steady. But Ifeanyi isn't like us. He grew up knowing about you and his. Well, he's not too happy and how things turned out. He feels cheated, like his family was the one left in the shadows while yours took the spotlight. Cynthia's mother paled as the same Nkechi registered in her mind. Nkechi? I remember her. She was always around, always so close to your father. I never suspected. Chuka, who had been silent, finally spoke up. Nkechi was a force to be reckoned with. She was fiercely protective of her son, and when your father refused to acknowledge them publicly, she swore that one day Ifeanyi would get what he deserved. Darlington's heart pounded as he pieced it all together. So what does Ifeanyi want? Why hasn't he come forward until now? Emmanuel sighed. Ifeanyi has been biding his time, gathering information and planning his next move. He's smart and he's patient. But now that your wedding is in shambles, he sees this as his opportunity to step out of the shadows and claim his place. A sense of dread settled over the group. The web of secrets was growing more tangled by the second, and the appearance of a new player, an unknown brother, only added to the complexity. Darlington looked at Cynthia, who was still crying, and then at Sophia, who seemed lost in her thoughts. The life they had all known was crumbling around them, and the future was more uncertain than ever. "What do we do now?" Cynthia whispered, her voice barely audible. Darlington reached out, taking Cynthia's hand in his. "We face the truth," he said, his voice resolute. "Whatever it is, we deal with it together. No more secrets, no more lies." Sophia nodded slowly, wiping away the last of her tears. "Together," she echoed, her voice steady. Emmanuel, satisfied that he had played his part, slipped his phone back into his pocket. "Good luck with that," he said, his tone almost genuine. "You are going to need it." With that, he turned and walked out of the church, leaving behind a room full of stunned silence. As Darlington, Cynthia and Sophia stood together, they realized that their journey was far from over. The revelation had torn them apart, but now they had to find a way to rebuild, if that was even possible. And with Ifeanyi lurking in the background, waiting for his moment, they knew that the road ahead would be anything but easy. But they were determined to face it, no matter what came next, because in the end, they were family, bound by blood, and the secrets that had been kept from them for too long. And together, they would find a way to move forward, even if the path was uncertain and fraught with danger. The story was far from over, and the next chapter promised to be even more challenging as the siblings confronted their past, their present, and the unknown future that awaited them. As Emmanuel's footsteps faded into the distance, the tension in the church seemed to lift slightly, but the air remained thick and unresolved emotions. Darlington, Cynthia, and Sophia stood together, each of them grappling with the whirlwind of revelations that had just been unleashed. The enormity of the situation pressed down on them, but there was no turning back now. Cynthia was the first to speak, her voice trembling but determined. "We need to find Ifeanyi. We can't let this spiral further out of control. We need to face him and deal with whatever he's planning before it's too late." Sophia nodded in agreement, her expression resolute. "I never knew about him, but he's still our brother. We have to talk to him, try to understand what he wants." Darlington felt a surge of protectiveness towards both women. He had spent years dreaming of a life with Cynthia, and despite everything, he wasn't ready to let go of that dream. But now, with Sophia as his sister and the looming threat of Ifeanyi, his responsibilities had multiplied. He knew that whatever they faced, they had to face it together. "You're right," Darlington said, his voice steady. "We need to find Ifeanyi, but we also need to be prepared for whatever he might throw at us. If he's been waiting in the shadows all these years, we have to assume he's not going to make this easy." Cynthia's mother, who had been standing quietly by, suddenly spoke up, her voice filled with regret. "I should have told you all the truth sooner," she said, her eyes brimming with tears. "But I was scared. I thought I was protecting you by keeping this secret. But I see now that I was only making things worse. Ifeanyi, he deserves to know that he's part of this family, but I am afraid of what he might do." Cynthia walked over to her mother and took her hand. "Mom, we can't change the past," she said gently, but we can decide how we move forward. Ifeanyi has every right to be angry, but we need to talk to him. We need to find a way to make this right. Darlington looked at Chuka, who had been standing quietly by, his face etched with concern. "Do you know where we can find Ifeanyi?" Darlington asked. Chuka sighed, nodding slowly. "I have a good idea of where he might be. But be careful, Darlington. Ifeanyi feels like he's been wronged his whole life. He's been watching, waiting, and he's likely to build up a lot of resentment. Meeting with him won't be easy." Darlington squared his shoulders, determination hardening his resolve. "We don't have a choice. We have to meet him, talk to him, and try to understand what he wants. We can't let this tear our family apart any more than it already has." Chuka nodded, then gave Darlington an address. "He's staying at a small hotel on the outskirts of town. It's secluded, which is probably why he chose it. But remember, approach him with caution. He is unpredictable." Darlington turned to Cynthia and Sophia. "Are you both ready for this?" Cynthia took a deep breath, steeling herself from what was to come. "I am ready," she said, her voice firm. "We need to do this." Sophia, though still shaking, nodded as well. "I am ready too. Ifeanyi is our brother, and we need to face this together." With a plan in place, the three of them left the church, the unfinished wedding ceremony a distant memory. The journey ahead was daunting, but they knew it was necessary. They had to confront Ifeanyi, learn his intentions, and find a way to move forward as a family, if that was even possible. The drive to the hotel was filled with silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Cynthia stared out the window, trying to imagine what Ifeanyi might be like. Would he be angry, hurt, or would he be someone who simply wanted to be part of their lives? Sophia, on the other hand, was grappling with the reality that her life had been built on lies. She had grown up believing one thing, only to find out that her entire world was based on deception. But as difficult as it was to accept, she knew she couldn't change the past. All she could do was face the future head on. Darlington, meanwhile, was focused on the task at hand. He knew that this meeting could go in many different directions, and he needed to be prepared for anything. His primary concern was keeping Cynthia and Sophia safe, but he also felt a responsibility to Ifeanyi, a brother he had never met but was connected to by blood and circumstance. When they finally arrived at the hotel, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The building was old and unassuming, a place that could easily be overlooked. Darlington parked the car, and the three of them sat for a moment, gathering their thoughts before stepping out. As they approached the entrance, Cynthia reached for Darlington's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Whatever happens in there, we face it together," she said, her voice filled with determination. Darlington nodded, his grip on her hand firm. "Together," he agreed. Sophia stood on Cynthia's other side, her resolve solidifying. "Let's do this." The lobby of the hotel was dimly lit and quiet, the kind of place where people came to disappear. They approached the front desk, where a bored-looking receptionist barely glanced up from her magazine. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone indifferent. "We are looking for someone staying here," Darlington said, his voice calm but firm. "His name is Ifeanyi." The receptionist's eyes flicked up, suddenly more alert. She hesitated, then nodded. "He's in room 203, second floor, down the hall to the right." Darlington thanked her, and the three of them made their way to the staircase. As they climbed the stairs, Cynthia's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment that could change everything. When they reached room 203, Darlington paused outside the door, taking a deep breath. He glanced at Cynthia and Sophia, who both nodded, signaling that they were ready. He raised his hand and knocked. The seconds that followed felt like an eternity, the tension building with each passing moment. Finally, they heard footsteps approaching the door. The sound of the lock turning sent a jolt of anxiety through all of them. The door creaked open, revealing a young man standing on the other side. He was tall with a lean build and a striking resemblance to their father. His eyes, however, were filled with a mix of weariness and something darker, something that hinted at years of pain and anger. "Ifeanyi?" Darlington asked, his voice steady despite the emotion swelling inside him. Ifeanyi's eyes narrowed as he looked at Darlington, then shifted to Cynthia and Sophia. His expression hardened as he took in their faces, the siblings he had watched from afar for so long. "Darlington," Ifeanyi said, his voice cold and measured, "I was wondering when you would finally show up." Cynthia stepped forward, her heart aching for the brother she had never known. "We are here to talk," she said softly. "We just want to understand. We want to know you." Ifeanyi's gaze flickered with something unreadable, but he didn't move from the doorway. "You want to understand?" he repeated, his tone laced with bitterness. "Understand what? That you lived your whole lives without knowing I existed? That our father abandoned me and my mother while you grew up with everything?" Darlington stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "We didn't know, Ifeanyi. We didn't know about you until now, but we are here and we want to make things right." Ifeanyi's jaw clenched, and for a moment it looked like he might slam the door in their faces. But then he stepped back, opening the door wider. "Come in," he said, his voice flat. "Let's see if there is anything left to salvage." As they stepped into the room, Darlington, Cynthia and Sophia knew that this was only the beginning. The past had been shattered and the future was uncertain, but they were determined to face it together, no matter what it would take. The room was small and sparsely furnished, with a single window that overlooked the darkening streets below. The tension was palpable as Darlington, Cynthia and Sophia entered, each of them acutely aware that this encounter would either heal old wounds or deepen them. Ifeanyi gestured for them to sit, taking a seat himself in the lone armchair. His gaze remained guarded, his posture defensive, as if he were bracing for another disappointment. Darlington sat next to Cynthia on the small sofa, with Sophia on the other side. The three siblings exchanged a glance, silently agreeing that this conversation needed to be handled delicately. For a moment, the silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside. Then Cynthia, her voice soft but steady, began to speak. "Ifeanyi, we understand that nothing we say can change the past," she said, her eyes filled with sincerity. "But we want to start afresh. To be the family we should have been all along. We were kept in the dark just as you were. But now that we know the truth, we want to make things right." Ifeanyi's expression remained stony, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something that suggested he was listening, even if he wasn't ready to forgive. "You had everything," he said, his voice low and filled with years of resentment. "A father who was there for you, a family that was whole. My mother and I were left with scraps, with secrets and lies. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" Sophia leaned forward, her voice filled with empathy. "We can't pretend to understand what you've been through, Ifeanyi. But we are not here to justify what our father did. We are here because we want to know you, to be the siblings we should have been from the start." Darlington, sensing the weight of Ifeanyi's pain, added, "We were all victims of our father's choices. but we don't have to let his mistakes define us. We have a chance to create something new, something better, but only if we are willing to let go of the past and start over. Ifeanyi's gaze flicked between them, his walls slowly beginning to crack. He had spent so long nurturing his anger, his sense of betrayal, and the idea of letting it go felt foreign, almost impossible. But deep down, there was a part of him that longed for the connection he had been denied. A part of him that wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, his family could be his too. I don't know how to do that, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I've been angry for so long. It's the only thing that kept me going. Cynthia reached out, placing her hand on Ifeanyi's arm. You don't have to figure it out alone, she said gently. We are here now and we are not going anywhere. The sincerity in her voice, the warmth of her touch seemed to reach Ifeanyi in a way that words alone couldn't. For the first time, his hardened expression softened and he let out a long shaky breath as if he were releasing years of pent-up pain. I want to try, he said, his voice thick with emotion, but I don't know where to start. Darlington smiled, a genuine relief smile. We start here, right now, by talking, by getting to know each other, by building something new together. It won't be easy and it won't happen overnight, but we will take it one step at a time. Sophia nodded in agreement, her eyes bright with hope. We will figure it out together as a family. For the first time since they had entered the room, Ifeanyi allowed himself to smile. A small tentative smile, but a smile nonetheless. It was a sign that, despite everything, there was a possibility for healing, for a new beginning. They spent the next few hours talking, sharing stories, and learning about the lives they had lived apart. The conversation wasn't always easy. There were moments of tension, of tears, and of unresolved hurts, but there were also moments of laughter, of connection, and of hope. It was a start, a fragile tentative start, but a start nonetheless. As the night wore on and the conversation wound down, the four siblings knew that their journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, moments when the past threatened to resurface, and times when the wound would ache anew. But they also knew that they had taken the first crucial step towards healing, towards becoming the family they were meant to be. When they finally stood to leave, Ifeanyi looked at his siblings with a newfound sense of belonging. Thank you, he said quietly, for not giving up on me. Darlington shook his head. We are family, Ifeanyi, and family doesn't give up on each other. As they walked out of the hotel together, the night air cool against their faces, there was a sense of closure, but also a sense of new beginnings. The path ahead was uncertain, but they were no longer walking it alone. Moral lessons. 1. The power of forgiveness. The story highlights the importance of forgiveness, both for others and for oneself. Holding on to anger and resentment can be corrosive, but letting go of past hurts can pave the way for healing and new beginnings. 2. The consequences of secrets and lies. The story shows how secrets, no matter how well-intentioned, can have long-lasting and damaging effects on relationships. It emphasizes the importance of honesty and transparency in maintaining trust and harmony within a family. 3. Family bonds. Despite the mistakes and betrayals of the past, the story demonstrates that family bonds can be mended with effort, understanding, and love. It reinforces the idea that family is not just about blood relations, but about the willingness to support and care for one another. 4. Facing the past. The characters in the story are forced to confront their past in order to move forward. This teaches the lesson that avoiding difficult truths can only lead to more pain, while facing them head-on is the first step towards resolution and peace. 5. Hope and new beginnings. Finally, the story reminds us that it's never too late to start over. Even in the face of betrayal and hurt, there is always hope for a better future if we are willing to work for it. We have come to the end of the story. If you love this video, please kindly share with your loved ones, leave us a comment on your opinion, and subscribe for another interesting video like this. Until I see you all on the next one. Bye for now.